This is James Corbett of CorbettReport.com coming to you on the 9th day of October 2010 here in Japan. And this is a video interview, so for all of those who are watching on YouTube, please go to CorbettReport.com to download the MP3 audio of this conversation. And for those who are listening to the MP3, please go to YouTube to watch the video. And today I am honored to be joined on the line by Paul Verge, independent filmmaker and the man behind Divergent Films at divergentfilms.com. He's made numerous documentaries, including Believers Beware and 2020 Hindsight Censorship on the Frontline, and also Hijacking Humanity, which listeners might know was episode 149 of the Corbett Report podcast. I'm sorry, episode 151 of the Corbett Report podcast, released earlier this week. So, Paul Verge, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me on your show, James.
Well, it is an honor to be speaking to you again, and I'm really excited about this because it's really the first time we've had a one-on-one conversation. So let's just start by talking a little bit about yourself and your background. Who is Paul Verge? Where did he come from? And why is he making documentary films?
Well, I'm just a normal, average guy who went to school, graduated from high school. I'm Canadian, raised in Vancouver. And I, on a lamb, decided to go on a trip back in 2003 with a good friend of mine down to Dallas, Texas. And my brother had just given me this David Icke book, and I hadn't read any conspiracy stuff. All I knew politically was that I was against the war in Iraq because it just seemed wrong. So I totally believed the official story of 9/11, didn't really have any political leanings except slightly left. And getting stopped at the border for having this David Icke book completely opened my eyes to the fact that this whole police state apparatus was very real and it was in my face. And so I read that David Icke book. It was called Alice in Wonderland and the World Trade Center Disaster. And that opened my eyes to a whole bunch of stuff. And, trying to disprove that book, I did a lot of research. And the more research I tried to find to debunk what I was reading, the more legitimate information I was finding, and once you open that Pandora's box, it's hard to go back. So 2004, 2005, I went through a period of, I guess what you could call cognitive dissonance, whereby I was quite paranoid and afraid of this paradigm that I'd uncovered, and I didn't have a lot of friends or people to talk to bounce these ideas off of. So I was stalking internet forums, reading a lot. I found out Alex Jones and Jeff Rents and all these other sites that had existed probably since the late 90s, and they were covering all this stuff. So it was a lot for my brain to take in, and I had many a sleepless night researching all this stuff until 2006. It was the 5th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. I got up the nerve, thanks to my friend Heidi, to go to New York and go to Ground Zero for the 5th anniversary. And right around that time, I had seen the movie Loose Change, the 2nd edition. I had really done a lot of research on the whole 9/11 event, so I decided I'm going to go there, interview people, get to know all the members and leaders of the so-called conspiracy movement, because there's many different areas that people bring to the table. And with that footage that I got at Ground Zero and during the whole conference, I met Dylan Avery, Luke Radowski, Jason Burmis and Corey Rowe. I met Alex Jones, all these people whose work I'd consumed previously. I decided to try and meet them. And they were all very outgoing, and the majority of them gave me time for interviews. And a lot of that footage I took, and within 2 months I had managed to get funding for Hijacking Humanity. Now, regarding Hijacking Humanity as a film, it originally was meant to be a cross-analysis of not just the 9/11 stuff, but what I had learned about the Federal Reserve System, what I learned about propaganda, what I learned about just this whole system of social engineering. And I hadn't seen a film that had put all of those elements together, right, to show how they are intercorrelated, I guess you could say. And it wasn't until I heard Richard Andrew Grove's podcast, Project Constellation, where I decided, wow, that's a very comprehensive overview of exactly what's going on in this whole situation, with 9/11 as kind of a keyhole through which you can see all these other events in their proper context. So he was actually the first guy that I contacted when trying to get actual interviews for Hijacking Humanity. and he was kind enough to let me stay at his and his fiancee Lisa's apartment in Connecticut, and we did a really great set of interview footage there, and we drove out to Dylan Avery's in Oneonta, New York, and we did some interview footage there with the Loose Change guys, and that was like the core seeds of Hijacking Humanity's footage, right? We managed throughout the next year to get a lot of interview footage with a lot of different people, but because I was a nobody still, I hadn't done any films yet other than a small film called Bursting Bubbles of Government Deception. Nobody was really returning my phone calls or my emails because, you know, who's to say what my actual perspective is, right? So it was a difficult climb, but I just felt like somebody had to say something that put all these events and all this conspiracy information in context in an understandable way. So that's the long and short of
Right. Well, that's interesting. I mean, that connects with my own story in a number of ways. Not only, obviously, also I was listening to 9/11 Synchronicity back when I was starting to get into this information, and that was one of those podcasts that really helped to expand out the research into a lot of other areas. And also, Bursting Bubbles of Government Deception was one of the first documentaries I remember watching online when I had my awakening. So hats off to you for being involved with that. And also in 2006, I was stopped for some special airport screening, and they were going through and asking me about the book that I was reading and taking my diary to make photocopies of it and things like that. So that was one of those in-your-face police state incidents that really shook me up quite a bit. I mean, I just wasn't expecting that. And although that wasn't exactly the trigger that got me into all of this, it certainly helped prepare me, I guess, for when I started hearing people talking about the police state and overt police state measures. It started to, I mean, there was something I could connect to personally. So in a way, there's almost a way in which the police state can backfire on the system that's trying to keep us oppressed.
Absolutely. I think, if anything, the more people that it victimizes, the more people it's actually inadvertently waking up. You can look at it as the system, the police state kind of gets tighter. It becomes like a tighter noose closing around the population. People can't help but see this noose coming closer and closer, and it's touching a few people and affecting their lives negatively. Then, you know, it's one of those things where the more they try and impose this police state, the more they try and impose these mental prisons, they're actually catalyzing our wake up even faster. And it's just a matter of having other people there to kind of catch you or to be there when you wake up so that you're not, you know, completely disoriented and suffering from cognitive dissonances I've went through, and I'm sure several people listening to this have gone through. It's just a period where you feel alone and that no one can relate to the enormity of what you're discovering. And the beautiful thing is there's this growing movement, ever-growing movement of people of all different, you know, walks of life and periods of consciousness, I guess you could say, where they get it. They get the big picture. Maybe not the full thing. Maybe they have a few blind spots they haven't seen through yet. But for the most part, they get the common ideology, which is that there's this new world order of elites that are trying to control and subdue humanity, or have been doing it for quite a while, but they're trying to get it down to like a technocracy based on the ideas of sophism and Fabian socialism. And it's essentially supposed to be this invisible prison for your mind, right? I'm sure you've seen The Matrix. I've seen The Matrix. It's one of the best metaphors to explain exactly how the system works and even how to get free, right? You have to learn your way past these agents that they'll dispatch. You have to outsmart and evolve your consciousness beyond the one that is causing all these problems.
Absolutely, you hit it right on the head there. I think what we are experiencing is a paradigm shift, and a paradigm is just sort of the dominant ideology in any given era, and people just understand things in a certain way. And I think we're coming to a new and different understanding. And certainly, I've seen it in my work. Just the incredible explosion of people who are waking up to this and are aware of this, at least in one way or another, depending on how much they're involved in it. But I'm sure you've seen this as well in your work. So tell us a little bit about your development after Hijacking Humanity and moving into Believers Beware and 2020 Hindsight and some of the other things that you've worked on.
Yeah, well, once the kind of core of Hijacking Humanity started coming together, which is around January 2008, I had kind of a pre-screening of a 2-hour version of the film. And that's, you know, Richard Grove and his fiance flew out. A couple other people who were in the film also flew out to Vancouver to attend that premiere. And we were really lucky. We sold out this theater at the, what was it called, the Planetarium. And we had a good reception, had a little after party, but we had these unknown people show up in black leather coats, and they kind of cornered Richard and started to ask him, you know, what do you need to move forward? And he's alluded to this offer of $3 million that was put our way, and that, you know, I can attest because I was there that actually happened. This guy, you know, said, if you guys stop talking about Freemasonry and these other elements of how we've dumbed down the population, then, you know, we can give you funding. We can get you an interview with Al Gore, you know, because he's a legendary truthsayer. And, you know, we indicated our disinterest, or Richard did, to the guy. And that guy actually tracked me down a couple months later at another movie premiere I was at, and confronted me over our inaction towards him. You know, upset that we would dare say anything negative about these organized systems and secret societies and such. And it's like, you know, they can only triumph, they can only continue their game as long as we're ignorant of those things' existence and the machinations, the Hegelian dialectics they use to keep us ignorant and to profit off of it. So, you know, we're not prepared to accept any money with strings attached, any corporate donation, any controlling interest to come and affect our independent media. And I think that speaks for you, for me, for Richard, and the many people that we're affiliating with, right? There's a huge list now that's growing through tragedyandhope.com, but it's getting larger, you know, every week. We're getting more people that are joining, and a lot of these people are conscious, you know, consumers of this information, but a lot of them are actually saying, you know what, I've consumed enough for right now. I feel like giving back. I feel like sharing some of this knowledge and understanding that I've accrued, and starting my own media. And that's the beautiful thing. Guys like you and me and, and Jan Irvin and Charlie Beach and Brett Venant, we're all doing our own thing, and we're showing how it can be done, right? You can get relatively high production quality now for relatively cheap, which you couldn't even do 5 years ago. And you can get hosting online, and all the tools that are necessary to share this information effectively are all available in abundance like they've never been available before. And so people really need to take advantage, you know, even though we're going through this tough economic time, you know, you don't want to buy a bunch of crap, but instead of buying, like, you know, a coffee maker or an extra new car, get yourself, you know, a little bit of film equipment or an editing machine, and, you know, join in sharing your voice in a way that's more than just bullhorning a few people on the street or trying to reach out to a few friends. You can actually go on the internet and share your videos and your perspective and your viewpoint and engage in dialogue and discussion with people and lead it to something constructive. It's not about forcing your viewpoint on anyone else. It's about bringing your viewpoint to the table and letting everyone else see how it tastes and then getting their feedback.